A trillionaire romantic woman falls in love with a janitor and says, "Let's get married today." The autumn rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Celeste Davenport's penthouse office at the Emiel Brock Hotel, creating a rhythmic backdrop to her mounting frustration. She was 24 years old, controlled a hospitality empire worth $3 billion, and couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation that didn't involve quarterly reports or acquisition strategies. "Miss Davenport, the new maintenance staff has completed orientation." Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Celeste barely glanced up from the contract she was reviewing, her royal blue blazer perfectly tailored, denim shorts a calculated rebellion against corporate conformity, her sun-bronzed skin glowing even under fluorescent lights. "Fine. Make sure they understand our standards." But standards were about to become irrelevant. She first saw him 2 days later, on her hands and knees in the lobby, yellow gloves bright against the dark marble floor. Ryan Walker moved with a deliberate grace that seemed out of place for someone scrubbing tiles. He was perhaps 28 with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, and eyes that suggested he was thinking about something far more interesting than the floor beneath him. Celeste found herself pausing mid-stride, briefcase in hand, watching him work. There was something in the way he moved, a familiarity that tugged at a place in her chest she'd locked away years ago. "You missed a spot," she said, not quite knowing why she'd stopped to speak to him at all. Ryan looked up, and for a moment, their eyes met. His were deep brown, flecked with amber in the morning light streaming through the glass doors. "Did I?" He examined the floor with theatrical seriousness, then looked back at her with the hint of a smile. "Looks pretty clean to me." The audacity of it should have annoyed her. Instead, Celeste felt the corner of her mouth twitch. "Are you arguing with me about the cleanliness of my own hotel floor?" "I'm engaging in a philosophical debate about perspective," Ryan replied, sitting back on his heels. "What looks like a flaw from one angle might be a reflection of light from another. Plato's cave, Miss Davenport, we're all just seeing shadows." She blinked. "Maintenance workers didn't quote Plato. You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are." He returned to his work, the yellow gloves moving in practiced circles. Youngest hotel magnate in America. Inherited the Emiel Brock chain at 19 when your father passed. Divorced at 22. Forbes featured you last month. The lonely queen of hospitality. He paused. That article was cruel. "It was accurate," Celeste said before she could stop herself. The admission hung in the air between them, more intimate than she'd intended. Ryan stood, bucket in hand, and for the first time she noticed the blue maintenance uniform that marked him as part of her invisible staff, the people who kept her empire running while remaining unseen. But there was nothing invisible about him. He was tall, with broad shoulders that spoke of physical work, and hands that somehow looked both capable and careful. "Accuracy and truth aren't always the same thing," he said quietly. "You might be alone, but I doubt you're lonely by choice." The presumption should have ended the conversation. Instead, Celeste found herself asking, "And what makes you an expert on my choices?" "I'm an expert on being underestimated." His smile was genuine but carried an edge. "People see the uniform and assume that's all there is. They don't ask about the philosophy degree I earned at night school, or the fact that I rebuild vintage motorcycles in my spare time, or that I chose this job because it gives me time to think." He met her gaze directly. "We both wear uniforms, Miss Davenport. Yours is just more expensive." No one spoke to her like this. Not her board members, not her attorneys, certainly not her staff. She should have been offended. Instead, she was riveted. "What's your name?" "Ryan Walker." "Well, Ryan Walker, that's quite a speech for a floor you claim is already clean." "I believe in being thorough," he replied, "with floors and with first impressions." Over the following weeks, Celeste found excuses to visit parts of the hotel she'd normally never see. The mechanical room, where Ryan maintained the HVAC systems with a precision that spoke of genuine craftsmanship. The service elevators, where she once caught him reading Marcus Aurelius during his break. The parking garage, where she discovered his treasure, a restored Harley-Davidson motorcycle, painted a deep midnight blue that gleamed under the harsh lights. 1975. "Shovelhead," Ryan said, catching her staring. "Took me 3 years to restore her. Every bolt, every wire, every piece of chrome, I did it myself." Celeste circled the machine slowly, her fingers hovering just above the leather seat. The craftsmanship was evident in every detail, the hand-polished chrome that reflected the garage lights like mirrors, the custom leatherwork on the seat, the way every component seemed to fit together with mechanical poetry. Why blue? It's the color of distance, Ryan said, moving to stand beside her. The sky, the ocean, things that look close but stretch on forever. Reminds me that perspective is everything. He ran his hand along the fuel tank with obvious affection, and Celeste noticed how his fingers traced the curves with the same care a sculptor might show a masterpiece. Besides, blue was always my favorite color. Has been since I was a kid. Something in his voice made her pause. A note of nostalgia, perhaps, or memory. She filed it away, that small detail, without knowing why it felt important. Do you write it often? She asked. Every day. To work, home, everywhere. His eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm, transforming his usually serious face into something younger, more carefree. There's nothing like it. The wind, the engine's growl, the feeling that you're part of the machine instead of just operating it. It's meditation in motion. When I'm writing, everything else fades away. All the noise, all the expectations, all the weight of trying to be enough in a world that tells you you're not. It's just me, the road, and freedom. I've never been on a motorcycle, Celeste admitted, surprising herself with the confession. She rarely admitted to not having experienced something. Ryan's eyebrows rose. Never? With all your money? You could own a dozen. Hell, you could own the whole Harley-Davidson factory if you wanted. Ownership isn't experience, she said, the words coming out more philosophical than she'd intended. I own 3 houses, 7 cars, more clothes than I could wear in a lifetime. But I can count on one hand the number of times I've felt truly alive in the past 5 years. My ex-husband used to say I was collecting possessions like other people collect moments. He was right about that, at least. Ryan studied her face, and she felt exposed under his gaze, not in an uncomfortable way, but in the way you might feel standing at the edge of the ocean, knowing it sees all of you and judges none of it. What happened to your marriage? He asked quietly. If you don't mind me asking. Celeste leaned against the workbench, her royal blue blazer a stark contrast to the oil-stained concrete around them. We got married for the wrong reasons. Business merger, basically. His family's hotel chain in Asia, my family's empire in the Americas. On paper, it was brilliant. In reality, it was 2 strangers living in the same house, having polite conversations about stock portfolios over breakfast, sleeping in separate wings of a mansion too big for either of us to fill with anything real. That sounds lonely, Ryan said, and the empathy in his voice was genuine, not pitying. It was. She picked at a loose thread on her shorts. The divorce was the easy part. We both knew we'd made a mistake. But after was harder. Because suddenly, I had to face the fact that I'd spent 3 years of my life in a marriage where neither of us could remember the other's middle name, where intimacy was scheduled like board meetings, where I couldn't tell you what made him laugh or what he dreamed about, or if he even had dreams beyond the next acquisition. Do you have dreams? Ryan asked. Beyond the next acquisition? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in years. I used to, she said slowly. When I was younger, before everything got so complicated, I used to dream about freedom, about being able to just exist without the weight of expectations, about finding someone who saw me, really saw me, instead of seeing Davenport money or Davenport connections or Davenport influence. And now? Now I'm not sure I remember how to dream, Celeste admitted. Isn't that pathetic? 24 years old and I've forgotten how to imagine a future that doesn't involve profit margins and shareholder meetings. Ryan was quiet for a moment, his hand still resting on the Harley's fuel tank. Then he said, I don't think you've forgotten. I think you've just been taught to ignore them. There's a difference. One is loss, the other is choice. And choice can be unmade. Their conversations became a fixture of her routine. She'd find him during his lunch break, eating simple sandwiches he'd made at home, usually peanut butter and jelly, sometimes turkey and cheese, always wrapped in plain wax paper, and they'd talk about everything except business. He introduced her to Seneca, Epictetus, and the concept that dignity wasn't defined by wealth but by how one chose to live. She found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. The pressure of being her father's sole heir, the way her mother had transformed after his death from warm to calculating, the marriage that had been more merger than love, the vast silence of her mansion where her footsteps echoed like accusations against empty rooms. You know what your problem is? Ryan said one afternoon, sitting on the steps of the service entrance where they'd started meeting when the weather was nice. The sun was warm on their faces, and somewhere nearby a mockingbird was running through its repertoire of stolen songs. You've spent so much time being what everyone needed you to be. You forgot to ask what you needed. And what do I need? Celeste asked, sitting beside him despite the fact that her shorts would probably get dirty on the concrete. She'd stopped caring about things like that around him, stopped caring about maintaining the perfect image, the untouchable CEO persona. Same thing everyone needs, to be seen. He looked at her directly, and she felt the weight of his attention like sunlight after a long winter, not as a billionaire or a CEO or a divorce statistic, just as Celeste, the person who makes terrible jokes when she's nervous, who tucks her hair behind her left ear when she's thinking, who has a scar on her right knee that she got from, what did you say? Falling off a bike when you were 7? You remember that? Celeste felt something warm bloom in her chest. She'd mentioned that scar once, weeks ago, in passing. I remember everything you tell me, Ryan said simply, because you're interesting. Not your money, not your position. You, the woman who admitted she's never seen The Princess Bride because her mother thought fantasy was frivolous. Who cries during commercials about dogs but never at actual sad movies because you've trained yourself not to show weakness? Who can recite the entire speech from Wall Street about greed being good, but secretly thinks it's bullshit? The accuracy of his observations left her breathless. Who sees you, Ryan? She asked softly. His smile was sad, tinged with something that looked like loneliness. Lately, you're about the only one. My coworkers think I'm weird because I read philosophy on breaks. My friends from college moved away, started families, got careers that don't involve scrubbing floors. My parents... He stopped, something crossing his face. My parents love me, but they don't understand me. They wanted me to take over the fishing business, follow tradition. They don't get why I'd rather read Epictetus and rebuild motorcycles. I get it, Celeste said. And she did. The loneliness of being misunderstood, of wearing a mask so long you forget what your real face looks like underneath. They sat there in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, watching the service entrance traffic, delivery trucks, staff coming and going, the mundane ballet of a hotel's hidden operations. And for the first time in years, Celeste felt something that approximated peace. Tell me about your motorcycle, she said eventually. How did you learn to restore it? Ryan's face lit up the way it always did when he talked about things he loved. My grandfather taught me. He was a mechanic, worked on bikes his whole life. He had this saying, a man who can fix what's broken is never truly helpless. I was 16 when he gave me that Harley. It was rusted out, seized engine, more problems than parts. He said if I could make her run again, she was mine. Did he help you? At first. But then he got sick. Cancer. Spent the last 6 months teaching me everything he knew, working on that bike together when he had the energy. He died when I was 17, about 2 weeks before I got her running again. Ryan's voice was thick with memory. The first ride I took, I drove to his grave, sat there for hours just talking to him about the rebuild, about everything he'd taught me. Felt like he was still there, you know? In the engine, in the chrome, in every decision I'd made about how to put her back together. Celeste found her eyes stinging. That's beautiful, Ryan. It's why I can't sell her, he continued. People offer me money all the time. Collectors, enthusiasts. One guy offered me $50,000 last year, but she's not about money. She's about memory, about the man who taught me that worth isn't what you own but who you become through the work you do. Your grandfather sounds like he was an amazing person. He was. Ryan smiled, though his eyes were wet. He would have liked you, I think. Would have appreciated someone who asks real questions instead of just making small talk, who sits on dirty steps with the maintenance guy instead of staying in her ivory tower. It's not an ivory tower, Celeste protested. It's just an office, with a view that costs more than most people make in a lifetime, walls decorated with original art, and a desk made from wood so expensive it has its own insurance policy. She couldn't argue with that. Fair point. But for what it's worth, I'd rather be here than there. Why? Ryan asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Celeste thought about it, really thought about it. Because here I'm just Celeste, not Davenport's daughter or the CEO or the ex-wife or the Forbes feature. Here with you I get to be a person who doesn't have all the answers, who can admit she's lonely without it being a corporate weakness, who can talk about dreams and philosophy and motorcycles and scars from childhood without someone calculating how to use that information against me later. That's a hell of a thing to say about your life, Ryan observed. It's a hell of a life to live, Celeste replied. Then impulsively she asked, will you teach me to ride, I mean? Your motorcycle. Ryan looked at her with surprise. Seriously? Seriously. You said it's meditation in motion, that it's freedom. I could use some of both. It's dangerous, he warned, and not just because of the bike. If people see you, the CEO of Mel Brock, on the back of a maintenance worker's motorcycle, there will be talk. Let them talk, Celeste said, feeling reckless and alive. I'm tired of living my life according to what other people think. Teach me. The smile that spread across Ryan's face was worth every scandalous headline that would inevitably follow. 3 months into their unexpected friendship, everything changed. Celeste was reorganizing her desk, a rare moment of hands-on work in her otherwise delegated life, when the drawer stuck. She pulled harder, and it flew open, contents spilling across her marble desktop. Papers, pens, old business cards, and something else, a silver bracelet. Her breath caught. She picked it up with trembling fingers, the small charms tinkling softly. A seashell, a tiny motorcycle, a heart with 2 sets of initials so worn she could barely make them out. CD plus RW. The office seemed to spin. She was 9 years old again, sand between her toes, the summer sun warm on her shoulders. Her father had taken her to a small coastal town for a rare vacation, just the 2 of them, away from business and expectations. And there, at a beachside lemonade stand, she'd met a boy. His name was Ryan. He was 11, all elbows and enthusiasm, and he'd taught her to skip stones across the waves. They'd spent 3 perfect weeks together, exploring tide pools, building sandcastles, and making promises the way only children can, promises that feel eternal in the moment. On the last day, he'd given her this bracelet. So you don't forget me, he'd said, his young face serious. Even when you go back to your fancy life. I could never forget you, she'd promised. But she had, or rather life had made her forget. They'd exchanged addresses, promised to write, but her father had died suddenly that fall. At 19, she'd been thrust into running an empire. The memory of that summer, that boy, had been buried under years of corporate meetings, hostile takeovers, and the weight of responsibility. The initials on the bracelet blurred as tears filled her eyes. R.W. Ryan Walker. It couldn't be. Could it? Her hands were shaking as she grabbed her phone, pulling up the employee database. Ryan Walker, 28, hired 3 months ago. Emergency contact? None. Previous employment? Various maintenance positions. Education? Bachelor's in philosophy. Night program at State College. She scrolled down to his photo. The official ID badge image, slightly blurry. But even through the poor quality, she could see it. The same eyes. The same slight tilt of his head. The same person, just 15 years older. And he'd known. All this time, through all their conversations, he'd known exactly who she was. Celeste was out of her chair and in the elevator before she'd fully processed what she was doing. The silver bracelet was clutched in her fist, the charms pressing into her palm. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the elevator descended. Too slowly, always too slowly. She found him in the parking garage, as she'd somehow known she would. He was working on his motorcycle, tools spread across a cloth, his blue uniform streaked with grease. The sight of him, so focused, so at peace, made her chest ache. You knew, she said, her voice echoing in the concrete space. Ryan looked up and she saw it immediately. The recognition, the resignation, the careful mask he'd been wearing cracking just slightly. Yes, he said simply, standing up and wiping his hands on a rag. I knew. Why didn't you say anything? The bracelet trembled in her outstretched hand. All this time, all these conversations. Why? He took a step toward her, and she saw the boy she'd known in the man he'd become. Because you didn't remember me, Celeste. And I thought maybe that was better. You had this whole life, this empire. He gestured at his uniform, his modest motorcycle, the oil stains that probably would never fully come out. I'm just me. Just you? The words came out fierce, almost angry. Ryan, you were my best friend. That summer was... Her voice broke. It was the last time I remember being happy, really happy, before everything fell apart. I know, he said quietly. It was the best summer of my life, too. They stood there 5 feet apart in a parking garage, separated by 15 years and $3 billion and 1,000 unspoken things. The motorcycle, Celeste said suddenly, the pieces falling into place. It's blue. You said blue was your favorite color. Ryan's smile was gentle, tinged with melancholy. You wore a blue swimsuit that summer, bright blue with little white flowers. You said it was your favorite color because it reminded you of the ocean. The detail shattered something in her. He'd remembered. All these years he'd remembered. Why did you come here? she asked. To the Melbrook. To my hotel. Did you plan this? No. He shook his head firmly. I needed a job, and this place was hiring. I didn't even know it was yours until the first day of orientation. I almost quit on the spot. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized from their childhood. But then I thought maybe this is fate. Maybe I could see you again even if it was just from a distance, even if you never knew it was me. But I talked to you. We became friends. You treated me like a person, Ryan corrected. Not like staff, not like someone beneath you. Just like Ryan. I couldn't walk away from that. It was selfish, I know, but I couldn't. Celeste closed the distance between them in 3 steps. She took his hand, still rough with calluses, still warm and somehow familiar, and pressed the bracelet into his palm. You gave this to me 15 years ago, she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. You told me not to forget you. I did forget, Ryan. I forgot everything good and real and true because I was trying so hard to survive. But I remember now, and I need you to know that finding you again, finding this, she gestured between them, at the impossible bridge they'd built between their worlds. It's like waking up from a nightmare I didn't know I was having. Ryan looked down at the bracelet in his hand, his jaw tight. Celeste, I'm a maintenance worker. You're Celeste Davenport. This doesn't make sense. Nothing about us has ever made sense, she said, and she was surprised to find herself laughing through her tears. A 9-year-old billionaire's daughter and an 11-year-old boy from a fishing town, becoming best friends over lemonade and tide pools. But it happened, Ryan. It was real then, and it's real now. Your world and my world are different, he insisted, but she could hear the hope creeping into his voice. Then let's build a new one, Celeste said. And then, in a moment of clarity so pure it felt like destiny, she heard herself say words that should have been crazy, but felt more right than anything she'd ever said. Hello, my friend. How was your day today? Is everything okay? Ryan's eyes widened. It was the phrase they'd used that summer, their special greeting, a joke between them because she always worried he might not be having a good day. The fact that she remembered, that she'd kept even this small piece of their history buried somewhere in her heart, it was everything. My day just got a lot better, he replied, the words catching in his throat. And before she could stop herself, before logic or reason or fear could intervene, Celeste took his face in her hands and whispered the words that would change both their lives. Let's get married. Today. Ryan stared at her, the parking garage lights harsh and fluorescent above them, the smell of oil and concrete and possibility hanging in the air. Celeste, I know it sounds insane, she interrupted, the words tumbling out in a rush. I know we've been apart for 15 years. I know we're from different worlds. I know every logical reason why this is the worst idea either of us has ever had. But Ryan, I have spent the last 5 years being logical. I married for logic, for business, for all the right reasons on paper, and it was the loneliest existence imaginable. She pressed her forehead against his, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. You ask me what I need. I need to stop being afraid. I need to stop letting other people's expectations dictate my life. I need to take one wild, impulsive, beautiful risk. And I need to take it with you. You don't even know me anymore, he said, but his hands had come up to rest on her waist, holding her steady. Then we'll learn each other again, Celeste said. We'll take our time, we'll be patient, we'll figure it out as we go, but we'll do it together, as husband and wife. People will think you've lost your mind. Let them. She pulled back to look him in the eyes. The people who matter will understand, and the people who don't understand don't matter. Isn't that what you told me? What Seneca would say? Ryan laughed, and the sound was pure joy. I can't believe you were paying attention to my philosophy lectures. I pay attention to everything about you, Celeste said. I have been, even before I remembered why. My soul knew you, Ryan. My heart knew you. My conscious mind just took a while to catch up. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, slowly, deliberately, he brought the silver bracelet up and fastened it around her wrist. The charms jingled softly, the tiny motorcycle catching the light. Okay, he said, okay. Let's get married. Today. His smile was crooked, uncertain and absolutely beautiful. But I have one condition. Name it. We take my Harley to the courthouse. Celeste laughed, the sound echoing through the parking garage, pure and unrestrained. Deal. Before we continue, I want to share a blessing with you, dear friend. From all of us here at this channel, we wish you a wonderful Christmas season. May God be with you and your family, bringing peace, love, and joy to your home. May this holiday season fill your heart with hope and your days with warmth. We're so grateful to have you as part of our community. Merry Christmas, and may God bless you abundantly. 2 hours later, Celeste stood in the county clerk's office wearing her royal blue blazer and denim shorts, her sun-bronzed skin glowing under fluorescent lights, while Ryan stood beside her in his maintenance uniform, yellow gloves folded neatly in his pocket. They'd stopped at a jewelry store, a modest local shop, not the high-end boutiques she usually frequented, and bought simple gold bands. The clerk, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked between them with barely concealed amusement. You folks are sure about this? We can schedule a ceremony for next week, give you time to— We're sure, Celeste and Ryan said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. Well, all right then. The clerk smiled. I've been doing this job for 28 years, and I can tell you one thing. The marriages that start with absolute certainty don't always last, but the ones that start with this kind of joy, those are the ones to bet on. The ceremony was brief, perfunctory, nothing like the elaborate wedding Celeste had endured at 21. No orchestra, no 300 guests, no 7-tier cake, just 2 people, some paperwork, and vows that somehow meant more in their simplicity than any grand gesture could have conveyed. I do, Celeste said, slipping the ring onto Ryan's finger. I do, Ryan echoed, his hand steady as he placed her ring beside the silver bracelet. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The clerk beamed at them. You may kiss the bride. Ryan cupped Celeste's face gently, his calloused thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Hello, Mrs. Walker, he whispered. Hello, Mr. Walker, she whispered back. Their kiss was soft, tentative, and carried the weight of 15 years of separation and the promise of all the years to come. Outside, the autumn afternoon had turned golden. Ryan's blue Harley-Davidson waited at the curb, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. He handed Celeste a helmet. He'd thought to bring 2, and helped her onto the seat behind him. Hold on tight, he said over his shoulder. Celeste wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him, the reality of this moment. As the motorcycle roared to life beneath them and they pulled into traffic, she pressed her cheek against his back and smiled. For the first time in 15 years, she was going home. Not to her empty mansion with its echoing halls and designer furniture, but to wherever this man would take her. Because home wasn't a place. It was the person whose heartbeat you could feel through their blue uniform, whose steady hands held the motorcycle steady, whose presence made the whole world make sense again. They rode through the city as the sun set, the bike's engine a steady growl beneath them, the wind whipping through Celeste's blonde hair. People stared. A woman in designer clothes and fine blue heels on the back of a motorcycle driven by a man in a maintenance uniform. But Celeste didn't care. She had spent her entire adult life caring what people thought, curating her image, maintaining control. Control was overrated. This wild, reckless, beautiful freedom was everything. Ryan pulled the Harley into the parking lot of a modest apartment complex on the other side of town. It wasn't much. Brick buildings from the 70s, small balconies, metal railings that had seen better days. Compared to Celeste's mansion in the hills, it was practically poverty. It was perfect. This is me, Ryan said, helping her off the bike. There was nervousness in his voice now, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. It's not much. Studio apartment, 1 room, bathroom, barely fits a shower. I know it's not what you're used to. Celeste put her finger to his lips, silencing him. Show me. His apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Small, neat, filled with books. Philosophy texts lined makeshift shelves. Motorcycle magazines stacked in careful piles. There was a workbench by the window covered in tools and small mechanical parts. The kitchenette was barely big enough for 1 person, the bed a simple mattress on a metal frame. But it was clean, organized, and somehow warm in a way her mansion had never been. I like it, Celeste said, and meant it. It feels like you. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, watching her explore his space with obvious anxiety. We should talk about this, Celeste. Really talk. We just got married on a wild impulse and we have the rest of our lives to talk, she interrupted, turning to face him. We have time to figure out where we'll live, what we'll do, how we'll navigate our different worlds. We have time to fall in love all over again, slowly and properly. But right now, in this moment, I just want to be here with you. Is that okay? His tension dissolved. Yeah, he said softly. That's more than okay. They ordered pizza, something Celeste couldn't remember doing since college, and sat on his small balcony watching the lights of the city come on as darkness fell. They talked the way they used to that summer, jumping from topic to topic, philosophy to memories to dreams they'd never shared with anyone else. "Do you ever think about how strange it is," Ryan mused, his feet propped on the railing, "that we found each other again? Of all the hotels in all the cities, I walked into yours." "I don't think it's strange at all," Celeste said, her head resting on his shoulder. "I think it's inevitable, like we were always supposed to find our way back to each other." "You sound like a romantic." "Maybe I am." She smiled. "Or maybe I'm just tired of pretending the universe doesn't sometimes give us exactly what we need, right when we need it most." Ryan turned to look at her, the city lights reflected in his eyes. "What if I'm not what you need? What if reality sets in tomorrow or next week or next month and you realize you made a terrible mistake? Then we'll figure it out," Celeste said firmly. "Together. That's what marriage means, doesn't it? Not perfection, but partnership. Not certainty, but commitment. When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." She touched his face, running her fingers along his jawline. "Someone who taught me that dignity isn't defined by wealth. That being seen matters more than being successful. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose happiness over expectation." Ryan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I never taught you that. You already knew it. You'd just forgotten." They stayed on that balcony until the city fell quiet, until the moon rose high and silver above them. And when they finally went inside, when Ryan pulled her close in his small bed that barely fit two people, when she fell asleep with her head on his chest and his arms around her, Celeste realized something profound. She had never slept better in her entire life. Morning came too soon and not soon enough. Celeste woke to find Ryan already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression of such tenderness it made her chest tight. "Good morning, Mrs. Walker," he said softly. "Good morning." She stretched, cat-like, and laughed at the absurdity of it all. "We really did it, didn't we? We really got married yesterday. We really did." He traced the outline of her face with one finger. "Any regrets?" "None," she said immediately. "You?" "Only that we didn't do it 15 years ago. We were children 15 years ago." "Maybe," Ryan conceded. "But I knew even then that you were special, that you were mine in some fundamental way I couldn't articulate. I just didn't know I'd have to wait this long to find you again." Celeste's phone, which had been mercifully silent overnight, began buzzing insistently on the nightstand. Reality, it seemed, had other plans for their honeymoon bubble. 17 missed calls, 34 text messages. Her assistant, her lawyers, her board members, everyone was looking for her. "I have to deal with this," she said apologetically. "I know." Ryan kissed her forehead. "Go be the powerful CEO for a while. I'll be here when you get back." But Celeste was already formulating a different plan. She grabbed his hand, pulling him up. "Actually, you're coming with me." "Where?" "To the office, to my office." At his confused look, she clarified. "We're married, Ryan. That means you're not just a maintenance worker anymore. You're the spouse of the CEO, and it's time everyone knew it." The look of panic on his face was almost comical. "Celeste, I can't just walk into the executive floor in my uniform. Then we'll stop by your hotel first and get you something else," she said practically. "But I'm not hiding this. I'm not hiding you. We're doing this together. Or not at all." An hour later, they stood in the lobby of the M.L. Brock Hotel. Celeste had convinced Ryan to at least change into jeans and a button-down shirt he kept for nice occasions, though he'd insisted on driving them there on his Harley, which meant her carefully styled hair was wind-blown and wild, her expensive shorts wrinkled from being worn 2 days straight. She had never felt more beautiful. The staff stared as they walked through the lobby hand in hand. Whispers followed them to the elevator. By the time they reached the executive floor, Celeste's assistant was practically vibrating with panic. "Miss Davenport, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for hours. The board is convening an emergency meeting. They heard rumors." She stopped short, noticing Ryan. "I'm sorry, maintenance isn't allowed on this floor without prior authorization." "He's not maintenance," Celeste said calmly. "He's my husband." The silence that followed was profound. "You're... what?" "We got married yesterday." Celeste held up her left hand, the simple gold band catching the light. "This is Ryan Walker, my husband, and I'd appreciate it if you could inform the board that their emergency meeting can wait until Monday. My husband and I are taking the weekend off." Her assistant's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "But Miss Davenport, you've never taken a weekend off in 5 years." "Then I'm overdue." Celeste smiled, squeezing Ryan's hand. Please clear my schedule and order some champagne sent to my office, the good stuff. We're celebrating. As they walked into her corner office, the same office where she'd found the bracelet just yesterday, though it felt like a lifetime ago, Ryan let out a low whistle. This is your office? One of them. Celeste closed the door behind them, shutting out the shocked faces and incredulous stares. The New York headquarters is bigger, but I prefer this one. Better view of the ocean. And it was true. The wall of windows overlooked the Pacific, gray-green and infinite under the morning sky. They stood there together, hands clasped, watching waves roll toward the shore. Do you remember, Ryan said quietly, that last day at the beach? We promised we'd come back, that we'd meet there every summer no matter what. I remember. Celeste leaned her head on his shoulder. We were so sure we'd keep that promise. We can keep it now, he said. We can go back. We can... He stopped, his body suddenly tense. Celeste, there's something I need to tell you. About that summer. About why we lost touch. The seriousness in his voice made her pull back to look at him. What is it? Ryan took a deep breath. The reason we stopped writing, it wasn't just that you got busy, or I got busy, or addresses got lost. Someone made sure we lost touch. What do you mean? Your mother, Ryan said, each word careful. She came to see my parents that October after your father died. She told them that you were going through a difficult time, that you needed to focus on learning the family business, that distractions weren't appropriate. She asked, very politely, very firmly, that we stop writing to you, and she made it clear that if we didn't comply, there would be consequences for my father's fishing business. Celeste felt the room tilt. My mother did what? She was protecting you, I think, Ryan said quickly, or at least that's what she believed. You'd just lost your father, you were about to inherit billions, and she didn't want some kid from a fishing town complicating your life. She had no right. Celeste's voice shook with fury. She had every right. Ryan countered gently. She was your mother and you were grieving. She made a choice she thought was best for you. And maybe in some ways she was right. Would you have been able to focus on learning the business if you'd been distracted by letters from me? Would you have become the CEO you are now? That's not the point. Celeste pulled away from him, pacing to the window. The point is she took away my choice. She decided what I needed, what I could handle without ever asking me. Just like she decided I should marry Daniel because it was good for the company. Just like she's decided everything about my life since Dad died. Which is why, Ryan said softly, coming to stand behind her. What we did yesterday was so important. You made a choice. Your choice. Not your mother's, not your board's, not society's, yours. Celeste turned in his arms, her anger transforming into something else. Determination. She's going to fight this. You know that, right? She's going to try to end our marriage, pay you off, make this all go away. Let her try. Ryan's jaw set stubbornly. I didn't come back into your life for your money, Celeste. I didn't even plan to come back into your life at all. But now that I have you again, now that you've chosen me the way I've always chosen you, I'm not going anywhere. Not for money, not for threats, not for anything. Promise? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I promise. He sealed it with a kiss, deep and sure and full of all the promises they'd made as children and were now making as adults. We're in this together, whatever comes next. What came next was Celeste's mother. The phone call came exactly 3 hours later, while Celeste and Ryan were halfway through their celebratory champagne. Her mother's voice was ice over steel, the tone Celeste had learned to fear as a child. My office now. No, Celeste said, surprising herself. A pause. Excuse me? I said no, Mother. I'm not coming to your office. If you want to talk to me, you can come to mine, and you'll address me as Mrs. Walker. She hung up before her mother could respond, her hands shaking. Ryan pulled her close and she buried her face in his shirt, breathing in the scent of him, motor oil and laundry detergent and something indefinably him. She's coming, Celeste mumbled against his chest. I know. It's going to be ugly. I know that too. He tilted her chin up. But we knew this wouldn't be easy. The question is, are you ready to fight for us? Celeste thought about the girl she'd been at 9, fearless, joyful, free. She thought about the woman she'd become at 24, controlled, successful, lonely, and she thought about who she could be now with this man beside her. I'm ready, she said. Victoria Davenport arrived 20 minutes later in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely contained fury. She was 52, perfectly preserved, wearing a suit that cost more than Ryan's monthly rent. Her eyes swept over Ryan with the kind of dismissal usually reserved for insects. "So you're the maintenance worker," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. "I'm Ryan Walker," he replied evenly. "Celeste's husband. A marriage that will be annulled by end of business today." "No, it won't," Celeste interjected, moving to stand beside Ryan. "I'm an adult mother. I can marry whomever I choose. You married the help." Victoria's composure cracked. "Do you have any idea what the board will say? What the shareholders will think? You've made us a laughingstock." "I married someone I love," Celeste said firmly. "Someone who sees me as a person, not an asset. Someone who challenges me, respects me, and makes me happy. When was the last time I was happy, Mother?" "Happiness is a luxury," Victoria snapped. "You have responsibilities. Your father built this empire for you." "No," Celeste interrupted. "Dad built this empire for himself, and he loved it, and I love it too. But he also used to tell me that life was meant to be lived, not just managed. He used to take me to the beach, remember? Just him and me, away from all this." She gestured at the opulent office. "He understood that there was more to life than board meetings and acquisitions. You're the one who forgot that after he died." Victoria's face paled. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm tired, Mother." Celeste's voice broke slightly. "I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of doing everything right and feeling everything wrong. I'm tired of living in that mansion by myself, eating dinner at a table that seats 20 with no one to talk to. I'm tired of being the perfect daughter, the perfect CEO, the perfect public figure, when inside I'm screaming that none of it matters if I don't have someone to share it with. And you think he's that someone?" Victoria turned her contempt on Ryan. "A man who scrubs floors for a living?" "A man who quotes philosophy while he works," Celeste corrected. "A man who's earning his degree at night school. A man who restores vintage motorcycles with his own hands. A man who sees dignity in honest work and doesn't measure his worth by his bank account." She took Ryan's hand. "Most importantly, a man who knew me when I was 9 years old and loved me anyway. Who loved me enough to walk away when you told his parents to, because he thought it was what I needed. Who loved me enough to keep his distance even when he found me again, because he thought I'd forgotten him." Victoria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but no less hard. "He's after your money, Celeste. Men like him always are. I signed a prenup before our marriage yesterday," Ryan said, speaking for the first time in several minutes. Everyone turned to stare at him. "I had a lawyer draw it up while Celeste was making calls. I waive all rights to her fortune, her properties, her assets. If this marriage ends, I walk away with nothing but what I brought into it." "You, what?" Celeste stared at him. "I don't want your money," Ryan said simply, looking only at her. "I never did. I want you. Just you. And I wanted to make sure you never had to wonder if there was any other reason I was here." The gesture, the sheer audacity and thoughtfulness of it, made Celeste's eyes sting with tears. This man, this wonderful, stubborn, impossible man. Victoria looked between them, something shifting in her expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in her armor. A recognition that this was different from what she'd expected. "You're making a mistake," she said finally. "Maybe," Celeste acknowledged, "but it's my mistake to make, and I'd rather make my own mistakes than live a perfect life that isn't really mine." Her mother left without another word, the door closing behind her with a sharp click that felt like a severed relationship. Celeste expected to feel guilty, or sad, or afraid. Instead, she felt lighter than she had in years. "You signed a prenup," she said, turning to Ryan. "I did, without telling me. I was going to tell you tonight." He looked slightly embarrassed. "I called a lawyer friend while you were in the shower this morning. Got him to rush the paperwork." "You're insane." "I'm in love with you," Ryan corrected. "Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, but they're not the same either." Celeste kissed him then, pouring 15 years of loneliness and loss and longing into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she whispered against his lips, "Take me home." "To your mansion?" "No," she smiled. "To your apartment. To our apartment. I want to wake up tomorrow morning in a place that smells like motor oil and old books, where the bed barely fits 2 people, where I can hear you working on your bike through the window. I want real life, Ryan. With you. Your board is going to have a collective aneurysm. Let them." Celeste grabbed her purse, the silver bracelet on her wrist catching the light. "I'll be the first CEO in history who commutes by motorcycle. We'll make it work. All of it. My world. Your world. This impossible, beautiful bridge we're building between them. We'll make it work because we're choosing to. Together." Ryan pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I love you, Celeste Davenport Walker. I love you too," she whispered back. "I always have. Even when I forgot, my heart remembered." They left the office hand in hand, past the shocked staff and the scandalized executives, through the lobby where whispers followed them like confetti. Ryan's blue Harley waited in the parking garage, chrome gleaming under fluorescent lights. He helped her onto the back, settled her arms around his waist. "Hold on tight," he said, just like he had the day before. But this time, as they rode through the city streets toward his apartment, toward their new life, toward whatever challenges tomorrow would bring, this time, Celeste knew she'd never let go. The motorcycle carried them into the sunset, two improbable lovers reunited by fate and silver bracelets, and a summer that had been waiting 15 years to reach its conclusion. Behind them, the Emiel Brocchi Hotel rose like a monument to the life Celeste was leaving behind. Ahead of them lay a simple apartment, a shared future, and the kind of happiness that couldn't be bought or inherited, only chosen, day after day, hand in calloused hand. And somewhere in the distance, if you listened very carefully beneath the roar of the Harley's engine, you could almost hear the echo of two children's laughter on a beach, finally finding its way home. 6 months later, the scandal had become yesterday's news. The tabloids had moved on. The board had accepted that Celeste's unconventional marriage hadn't diminished her performance. If anything, she was sharper, more present than ever. Ryan now managed the hotel's engineering department, overseeing a team of 20, but they'd chosen to stay in their renovated apartment rather than move to her mansion. "It's about the principle," he'd said. "We started here. This is our foundation." The blue Harley still gleamed in the parking lot, carrying them to work each morning. But one mystery remained unresolved, a shadow that had quietly haunted Celeste since their wedding day. It was Victoria who finally brought it to light. Celeste's mother had maintained icy distance since the marriage, attending board meetings with cold professionalism, but refusing all personal contact. So when she requested a private meeting at the original Mel Brock Hotel, the flagship her late husband had built, Celeste knew something significant was coming. She brought Ryan. They faced everything together now. In the presidential suite, Victoria stood by the window, silhouetted against afternoon light. When she turned, Celeste was shocked to see tears streaming down her mother's face, something she'd never witnessed in 30 years. "I owe you both an apology," Victoria said, her voice breaking. She pulled out a wooden box and set it on the table. "Your father knew about Ryan, about that summer. You talked about him constantly when you came home." She opened the box. Inside were dozens of letters, yellowed with age, all addressed in a young boy's handwriting, all unopened. "Ryan wrote to you," Victoria whispered. "Every month for 3 years. Beautiful letters about his life, his dreams, asking if you remembered him." Celeste's hands shook as she touched the letters. Ryan stood abruptly, moving to the window, processing 3 years of unanswered questions built on a lie. "I couldn't destroy them," Victoria continued, "but I couldn't let you have them either. I told myself I was protecting you, but the truth is I was angry, at your father for dying, at you for grieving him, at this boy who made you happy when I couldn't." She pulled out a photograph, Celeste's father standing beside a young boy next to a blue motorcycle. "Your father used to vacation in that coastal town every year," Victoria explained. "He met Ryan's grandfather, became friends. That's why he took you there. He wanted you to meet this boy who loved books and motorcycles and philosophy. He engineered that meeting, Celeste. That summer was his gift to you." Ryan turned, his face pale. "The Harley my grandfather gave me," Victoria nodded. "Your father bought it for him originally as a thank you gift. When your grandfather gave it to you, he was passing on that gift, the gift of independence, of freedom, of choosing your own path." The revelation settled over them like falling snow. Celeste looked at the letters and felt not just loss but relief. "Mother, what you did was wrong," Celeste said quietly, taking her mother's hands. "But I understand. Grief makes us control what we can when we couldn't control the loss. Dad dying broke something in both of us." "I don't deserve your forgiveness," Victoria said. "But I'm giving it anyway," Celeste replied, "because holding on to anger means Ryan and I lose even more time, and we've lost enough already." Ryan joined them. "If we'd reconnected at 14 or 16, we wouldn't be who we are now. We needed to grow separately so we could choose each other fully as adults." Victoria looked between them with something approaching respect. "My husband would have liked you very much, Ryan. These are yours now," Victoria said, gesturing to the letters. "Read them together." And maybe someday you can forgive me. Celeste hugged her mother, really hugged her for the first time in years. We already have, she whispered. Later on their balcony, they read the letters together as sunset painted the city gold. The box sat between them, a treasure chest of lost years and unanswered questions. Letters about school and philosophy and dreams. Letters describing the Harley's restoration in painstaking detail. Every bolt he turned thinking of her. Every coat of blue paint applied with hope she'd remember. Letters asking if she still thought about tide pools and lemonade stands and promises made in the sand. As time passed in the letters, Ryan's handwriting grew messier, more desperate. The words became pleas wrapped in teenage dignity, hope slowly drowning in silence. The final letter, dated 3 years after their summer, was stained, whether from tears shed while writing or tears shed now, Celeste couldn't tell. Dear Celeste, this is the last letter I'll write. I've been writing to silence for 3 years and I finally understand. You've moved on, forgotten. Our summer was just a summer to you when it was everything to me. I don't blame you. You have your life, your world, and I have mine. But I kept my promise. I never forgot you. I finished the Harley. It's blue, like the ocean where we met. Every time I write it, I think of you. I'll keep thinking of you even if you never think of me. I'll keep believing that somewhere in the world, there's a girl who once knew me when I was just a boy with dreams and dirty hands, and she didn't care about anything except whether I could skip stones. That girl made me believe I could be more than my circumstances. Even if she doesn't remember, I'll remember enough for both of us. Goodbye, Celeste. Thank you for one perfect summer. Love always, Ryan. Celeste sobbed openly, her tears falling on yellowed paper. Ryan pulled her close, his own eyes streaming. God, she whispered against his chest. I missed so much, we missed so much. But we found it again, Ryan said fiercely, his voice thick with emotion. Against impossible odds. Across 15 years, $3 billion, every reason why it shouldn't work. Your father set it in motion, your mother tried to stop it, but we still ended up here together, reading these letters on our balcony. That's not loss, Celeste. That's destiny refusing to give up. Let's go to the beach, Celeste said suddenly. The beach where we met. Let's finish that summer properly. On the Harley? Ryan grinned. On the Harley, she confirmed. That weekend they rode down the coast, wind whipping through Celeste's blonde hair, the Harley's engine roaring beneath them like a heartbeat. The world blurred past in shades of blue and gold. The town had changed in 15 years, but the beach remained eternal, endless and blue and patient, as if it had been waiting for them to come home. They walked the shoreline hand in hand, sand warm beneath their feet. They found the tide pools where they'd once hunted for crabs. The lemonade stand was gone, replaced by a smoothie bar, but they bought overpriced drinks anyway and toasted to memory. Do you remember what you said to me that last day? Ryan asked. You said, I'll never forget you, not ever, not if I live to be 100. I meant it, Celeste said softly. My conscious mind forgot, but my heart never did. As the sun began its descent, Ryan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I had this made, he said, opening the box to reveal 3 symbols, a tiny book, a miniature hotel, and a golden heart with their initials. For our story, Ryan explained. The book for our conversations, the hotel for where we found each other, and the heart, he touched her chest, because that's what this has always been about. 2 hearts that recognized each other across impossible distance. He fastened the new charms beside the old. The weight felt perfect, history and hope together. I love you, she said, as the sun touched the horizon. I loved you when I was 9. I love you now at 24, and I'll love you when I'm 90. I love you too, Ryan replied. Even when I forgot your face, I remembered your heart, and that was enough. They stayed until stars emerged, until the tide came in and erased their footprints. When they climbed back on the blue Harley, Celeste pressed her cheek to Ryan's back and felt complete. The motorcycle carried them home through the night, engine purring, chrome reflecting starlight. Behind them, the beach held only temporary impressions, but the promise was eternal, because some promises live deeper than memory, in the place where souls recognize their other half. And when 2 people brave enough to honor those promises choose each other, not once but twice, the universe itself celebrates. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. It was real. 2 people who built something beautiful from broken pieces, intercepted letters and a silver bracelet that refused to be forgotten. Every morning when they ride through the city on that blue Harley, her arms around his waist, his hands steady on the handlebars, they honor the promise made as children and renewed as adults. Never forget, never give up, never stop believing that love, real love, always finds its way home.